There are moments in every human life when the pursuit of wealth and the pursuit of wisdom appear to walk in opposite directions. One leads outward, toward effort, acquisition, measurable success. The other leads inward, toward reflection, understanding, self-mastery. Many people feel they must choose. They fear that if they dedicate themselves to wisdom, they will lose the race for material security. And if they devote themselves to financial success, they may lose access to the inwardness where meaning resides. This conflict is ancient. It was felt by merchants and farmers, kings and servants, philosophers and artisans, yet it remains deeply modern. In a time when money is tied to survival, comfort, opportunity, identity, even dignity, the pursuit of wealth can consume the mind and narrow the horizon. At the same time, the hunger for wisdom persists. A voice within us continues to ask questions that money cannot answer. What is a good life? What does it mean to live with purpose? How do we choose what truly matters? This tension between wealth and wisdom often creates confusion. Some people attempt to reject the world entirely, believing that any engagement with material life is a distraction from truth. Others surrender completely to the pursuit of wealth, hoping that external success will silence the questions of the soul. Both paths, however, leave the human being divided and unfulfilled. For the one who rejects the world discovers that the body has needs that will not disappear, and that wisdom cannot flourish within instability. The one who chases money discovers that financial security does not guarantee peace, and that abundance without understanding becomes emptiness. And so the human being stands between two longings, the longing for material well-being and the longing for intellectual and spiritual clarity. Both are essential, but without guidance, they seem to compete. This is where the dilemma deepens. Most modern discussions about wealth focus on technique, how to earn, how to invest, how to multiply, how to protect. Rarely do they ask, what is the purpose of wealth? What is its moral nature? What is its place in the life of a human being? Wisdom, on the other hand, is often presented as abstract, detached, impractical, disconnected from the sweat and labor of daily existence. People imagine philosophers sitting in quiet rooms while the world outside demands effort, money, and constant movement. Yet the human heart knows that life cannot be divided so neatly. We live in both worlds at once. We are physical beings with responsibilities, and we are spiritual beings with questions. We are thinkers and workers, dreamers and doers. The challenge is not to choose between wealth and wisdom, but to find the path where both become aligned. At this crossroads, a new question appears. Is there a way to pursue wealth without losing wisdom? And is there a way to pursue wisdom that strengthens rather than weakens our engagement with the world? Maimonides believed the answer was yes. He believed that the inner and outer lives of a human being can be harmonized through understanding, discipline, and purpose. His philosophy is not an escape from the world, but a way of dwelling in it with clarity and balance. He did not call people to retreat from life, but to elevate it. He believed that one can walk the path of reason and the path of spiritual devotion while participating fully in material existence. But before reaching that harmony, Maimonides insisted that we understand the nature of the human struggle. According to him, the root of the dilemma does not lie in money itself. Wealth is neither holy nor impure. It is a tool, a possibility, a capacity. What complicates human life is the confusion between what is essential and what is accidental, between what nourishes the soul and what merely satisfies temporary impulses. A person may be surrounded by abundance, yet be internally impoverished. Another may live modestly and possess profound richness of understanding. But Maimonides did not glorify poverty nor idealize wealth. Instead, he recognized the complexity of human life. Poverty can bring suffering, fear, and instability that hinder intellectual and spiritual growth. Wealth can become a source of arrogance, distraction, and moral blindness. Neither condition is inherently virtuous. What matters is how a human being uses the resources of life to ascend toward truth. The dilemma, then, is not external. It begins in the mind. The real struggle is between clarity and confusion, between desire and discernment, between the short-term impulses of the body and the long-term aspirations of the soul. Wealth becomes dangerous only when it becomes the goal rather than the instrument. Wisdom becomes ineffective when it avoids the responsibilities of human existence. What the modern world often forgets is that the pursuit of wealth without wisdom leads to deficiency, not abundance. It produces anxiety, envy, and an endless hunger that no amount of money can satisfy. The pursuit of wisdom without engagement leads to fragility, idealism without grounding, thought without action. The human being is born to integrate both. Maimonides taught that the ultimate goal of life is intellectual and spiritual perfection, the understanding of reality, the cultivation of virtues, and the alignment of one's inner world with truth. But he also taught that this higher path requires stability, health, order, and material sufficiency. The mind reaches upward when the body is cared for. The soul ascends when the external world is managed with discipline and responsibility. Thus, the hidden path to wealth and wisdom is not a path of renunciation nor a path of indulgence. It is a path of harmony, where material life supports intellectual life, and intellectual life guides material life. It is a path where the external and internal become partners rather than enemies. This is the path Maimonides walked. This is the path he mapped for those seeking clarity in a world of confusion. And now, with the dilemma fully illuminated, we can begin to understand how Maimonides resolved it, and how his method can guide us toward a balanced and meaningful life. To understand how Maimonides resolved the tension between wealth and wisdom, we must enter the inner architecture of his thought. His work spans law, medicine, philosophy, and theology, yet a single thread weaves through them all: the conviction that human flourishing depends on the proper ordering of the mind, the emotions, and the material conditions of life. For him, there was no division between the intellectual and the practical. Every aspect of existence was meant to be harmonized under the guidance of reason and the ethical demands of the Torah. Maimonides first approached the question of wealth through the lens of human nature. In the 8 chapters, his treatise on ethics and psychology, he teaches that the human being is composed of body and soul, each with its own needs and functions. The soul reaches its perfection through knowledge, understanding, and moral discipline. The body requires health, stability, and order. Ignoring either side leads to imbalance. Excessive attention to the body blinds the soul. Neglect of the body weakens the soul's ability to ascend. Wealth, therefore, plays a specific role in the moral and intellectual life. It is not an end, but a condition that frees the mind from certain burdens. Poverty, Maimonides recognized, creates anxiety and preoccupation, narrowing one's attention to the mere struggle for survival. Such circumstances hinder contemplation, study, and the quiet discipline required for wisdom. Yet wealth, if not governed by ethical principles, easily becomes a source of arrogance, indulgence, and spiritual complacency. It can distort judgment and weaken the virtues necessary for meaningful growth. Thus, in the Mishneh Torah, when Maimonides codifies the laws of charity, business ethics, and communal responsibility, he insists that financial life is a sacred arena where the character of a person is revealed. The just merchant, the honest employer, the generous giver, these are not merely socially useful individuals. They are people whose material actions align with truth, who use the world in a way that elevates both themselves and those around them. This approach reflects a profound conviction. Wisdom is not something attained in isolation. It is realized in the midst of life, through engagement with obligations, relationships, and the responsibilities of the material world. The way a person earns, spends, gives, and manages resources shapes the inner life. Wealth becomes the training ground of virtues such as moderation, integrity, compassion, and humility. It becomes a tool for building the ethical foundation upon which higher understanding rests. Maimonides expresses this idea with clarity in the Guide for the Perplexed. There he explains that the commandments and ethical laws are not arbitrary decrees, but instruments designed to refine human beings. Their purpose is to strengthen character, direct emotions, and bring the soul into a state where it can perceive truth. Material life is the arena of discipline, intellectual life is the arena of ascent. One prepares the other, and this is where Maimonides makes a bold claim. The true purpose of wealth is to support the path of intellectual and spiritual perfection. When used wisely, material resources create the environment in which the mind can rise. When misused, they become chains that bind the soul to distraction and desire. Wealth does not corrupt on its own. It corrupts only when it is detached from purpose. This is why Maimonides insists on moderation. In his doctrine of the golden mean, he teaches that virtue lies between extremes. The person who hoards wealth is ruled by fear and greed. The person who wastes it is ruled by impulse. The one who uses wealth responsibly, neither excessively nor recklessly, creates equilibrium. This balance is what allows the soul to remain focused on its higher goal. He extends this idea even to the domain of emotion. The one who loves money excessively becomes its servant, dominated by anxiety or pride. The one who despises money irrationally rejects the responsibilities of human life, but the one who views money as a tool recognizes its purpose clearly. They neither cling to it nor flee from it. They use it in the service of what is good. This stance is not theoretical. It arises from Maimonides' own life. He was not a cloistered philosopher. He lived in the bustling world of commerce, community leadership, and the practice of medicine. He supported his extended family, served as a legal authority, advised leaders, and treated the sick. His days were filled with responsibility, yet he preserved time for intense intellectual study. His life demonstrated that the integration of wealth and wisdom is not only possible, it is the natural state to which the human being is called. In letters to his students, he warns that wealth pursued without wisdom becomes a prison. It gives the illusion of security while hollowing out the inner life. But he also warns that wisdom pursued without attention to material responsibilities becomes detached and fragile. True wisdom strengthens life, it does not withdraw from it. This unity between the economic and the spiritual is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Maimonides' thought. Many imagine that a spiritual path requires renunciation, austerity, or the rejection of worldly success. Maimonides rejects this idea entirely. The Torah, he teaches, is a guide for the whole human being. It addresses the body and the soul, the field and the sanctuary, the market and the study hall. A life of truth embraces the full spectrum of human experience. Thus, according to Maimonides, the question is never, should I pursue wealth or wisdom? The question is, how can I pursue wealth in a manner that supports wisdom? And beyond that, how can wisdom guide the way I acquire, distribute, and use wealth? When these questions are answered with clarity, the conflict dissolves. Wealth becomes the servant of the mind becomes the guide of wealth, and the human being becomes whole. This perspective lays the foundation for a deeper transformation. For Maimonides does not only seek to correct external behavior, he seeks to redirect the entire inner orientation of a person. He wants the human being to understand the structure of reality, the nature of God, and the meaning of existence. Wealth, when aligned properly, becomes a step on this path, not the destination. And now that we understand how Maimonides positioned wealth within the moral and intellectual life, we can enter the heart of his vision, the profound unity between material responsibility and spiritual ascent. At the center of Maimonides' vision lies a profound truth. The human being is meant to ascend, not outwardly, through status or accumulation, but inwardly, through understanding. The journey toward wisdom is the journey toward seeing reality as it truly is. And this ascent cannot be separated from the material world. Instead, it emerges through the proper ordering of one's inner life while living fully within the responsibilities of external life. In the Guide for the Perplexed, Maimonides describes the human being as a creature suspended between two worlds. One world is the physical domain in which we labor, earn, build, plant, nurture, and manage. The other is the intellectual and spiritual realm in which we contemplate, discern, and understand. The perfection of the human being occurs when these two realms converge, when the body becomes the servant of the intellect, and the intellect becomes the servant of truth. This union is not achieved through withdrawal or asceticism. It is achieved through clarity. Wisdom is not an escape from life, but a way of illuminating it. When a person understands the order of reality, the laws of nature, the purpose of commandments, and the structure of the soul, everything they do in the world becomes grounded, intentional, and elevated. This is why Maimonides insists that material life must be guided by reason. When the mind sees clearly, the emotions find balance. When the emotions find balance, the impulses that distort judgment lose their force. Wealth, then, becomes neither a temptation nor a burden. It becomes part of the order through which the human being moves toward higher understanding. In Maimonides' spiritual system, the soul ascends through stages. At the first stage, a person seeks to satisfy physical needs. This is necessary but not sufficient. At the second stage, a person seeks moral refinement, moderating emotions, cultivating honesty, discipline, and compassion. At the third stage, the intellect begins to awaken. Questions emerge. What is the nature of reality? What is the structure of the world? What does it mean to live with purpose? At the fourth stage, the mind contemplates truth, and knowledge becomes a form of devotion. Here, Maimonides reveals the heart of his spiritual philosophy. Understanding is the highest form of worship. To know the order of creation is to draw near to its creator. To grasp the wisdom inherent in existence is to participate in the divine. This is why he writes in the Mishneh Torah that the love of God increases with knowledge, and that contemplation of the natural world leads to awe, humility, and reverence. In this vision, wealth is not the enemy of devotion. Ignorance is, confusion is, attachment to illusion is. Wealth becomes an obstacle only when it fills the space where understanding should dwell. But when governed by wisdom, it becomes a vessel through which the soul gains stability and clarity. Maimonides compares the human condition to a traveler in the desert. Without water and shelter, the traveler cannot think clearly, cannot discern direction, cannot contemplate the stars. But once the basic conditions are met, the mind can rise. It can observe, think, understand, and navigate. Wealth provides shelter. Wisdom provides direction. The two are not opposites. They are companions. This synthesis reaches its most poetic expression in Maimonides' concept of divine providence. He teaches that providence corresponds to intellect. The more a person understands the order of the world and aligns their life with reason, the more they place themselves under the shelter of divine wisdom. This does not mean that wealth is a sign of divine favor. Instead, it means that clarity protects the soul from chaos, confusion, and destructive impulses. A wise person uses their resources in harmony with truth, and in doing so, they create a life that reflects the structure of reality. In this way, the integration of wealth and wisdom becomes a reflection of something deeper, the unity of the human being. When a person is internally divided, pulled by desire, fear, and impulse, their material life becomes chaotic, and their intellectual life becomes clouded. But when the soul is aligned, when the mind governs the emotions and the emotions cooperate with reason, The entire life becomes a single path leading upward. This is why Maimonides elevates the idea of moderation. Moderation is not merely an ethical principle, it is the architecture of spiritual growth. When the mind remains steady, when desires do not distort perception, when emotions are balanced, the individual becomes capable of true understanding. Excess and deficiency disrupt this stability. They scatter the mind and fracture the soul. In this balanced state, wealth becomes a tool for justice, generosity, and moral purpose. The home becomes a sanctuary of order. Work becomes a discipline of excellence. Study becomes a form of worship. The routines of daily life become steps in the ascent toward truth. In this synthesis, the external world is not abandoned, it is transformed. Maimonides teaches that the highest human state is not reached through miracles, visions, or mystical experiences. It is reached through clear understanding, grounded in disciplined living. True enlightenment is not sudden or ecstatic. It is gradual, structured, and stable. It arises from the careful alignment of one's material, emotional, moral, and intellectual dimensions. This is the hidden path, a life in which the pursuit of wisdom shapes the pursuit of wealth, and the pursuit of wealth supports the pursuit of wisdom. Each becomes a mirror in which the other reveals its true meaning. Wealth without wisdom becomes empty. Wisdom without stability becomes fragile. But the two united create a life that is whole, grounded, and oriented toward what is eternal. Maimonides believed that when a person reaches this harmony, they manifest the highest form of human dignity. They live with courage, humility, generosity, clarity, and peace. They are not enslaved by impulses, nor blinded by arrogance. They see the world with sober eyes, and they walk through it with a mind that is awake. Their actions reflect understanding, and their understanding becomes an offering of gratitude. This synthesis illuminates the path toward a life in which the spiritual and the material cease to clash. Instead, they become partners in the ascent toward truth. And once this unity is achieved within the soul, it radiates outward into every corner of life. The value of Maimonides' teachings lies not only in their intellectual beauty, but in their capacity to guide daily life. His philosophy is not meant to remain in books or lofty reflections. It is meant to reshape the way a person thinks, acts, earns, gives, studies, and interacts with the world. The true measure of wisdom is the transformation it produces. To apply Maimonides' hidden path of wealth and wisdom, we must begin with clarity. Clarity about purpose, clarity about values, clarity about the nature of the human soul. From this point, a series of practical principles emerges, principles that align the external and internal dimensions of life, creating a stable foundation for spiritual ascent. The first principle is moderation. Maimonides insists that the middle path is the path of health, integrity, and self-mastery. Extremes generate instability. A person who pursues wealth obsessively destroys balance. One who rejects material responsibility weakens the structure of life. Moderation requires discipline, the ability to restrain impulse, to discern needs from desires, to recognize when enough is enough. When the mind governs material choices, the soul remains steady. The second principle is ethical earning. In the Mishneh Torah, Maimonides declares that the highest form of wisdom manifests in honesty. The marketplace, often seen as a realm of competition and aggression, becomes in his view a stage for moral excellence. A person who earns wealth through integrity creates harmony between the external and internal worlds. Their financial actions do not burden the conscience, distort judgment, or dishonor the soul. Instead, they reflect truth. The third principle is generosity. Maimonides ranks the levels of charity with meticulous care, showing that giving is not merely a moral duty but a spiritual refinement. Generosity breaks the grip of possessiveness. It weakens the illusions of ownership and self-sufficiency. It trains the soul to see others, to recognize the interconnectedness of human life, and to align material actions with compassion. When wealth circulates with purpose, it becomes an instrument of justice. The giver grows, and the world heals. The fourth principle is order. Maimonides believed that a disordered life fragments the mind and confuses the heart. He valued routines, structure, and consistency. An orderly home, an orderly schedule, an orderly financial life all contribute to inner equilibrium. In a calm environment, the intellect expands. In chaos, emotions dominate. Order is not rigidity. It is the arrangement of life in harmony with reason. The fifth principle is the integration of study into daily life. Maimonides teaches that the mind strengthens through continual reflection. He did not expect people to abandon their responsibilities to pursue full-time study. Instead, he encouraged steady, consistent learning, moments of contemplation woven into the rhythm of work and family life. The mind must breathe, must rise, must touch truth regularly. Even a small amount of daily study gradually transforms the soul. The sixth principle is emotional discipline. In the 8 chapters, Maimonides describes the soul as a system of faculties that must be trained. Anger, envy, fear, and desire are natural forces, but if left unregulated, they distort perception and weaken judgment. Emotional clarity is the foundation of wisdom. A calm mind sees reality. A turbulent mind sees its own projections. This discipline fosters humility, patience, and compassion, qualities essential for both ethical wealth and spiritual insight. The seventh principle is physical well-being. Maimonides, as a physician, emphasized that the body must be cared for with wisdom. Neglecting health undermines intellectual potential. Excess weakens the senses. Deficiency weakens vitality. Nutrition, rest, movement, and moderation create the conditions for a stable mind. Wisdom does not flourish in exhaustion or imbalance. The 8th principle is purposeful work. Maimonides believed that work dignifies the human being. It provides structure, contribution, and responsibility. A person who works with excellence transforms labor into a form of service. Work becomes not merely a means to wealth, but a path to character. When approached with integrity, effort, and gratitude, work becomes part of the spiritual ascent. The 9th principle is mindfulness of purpose. A person must regularly ask, for what am I earning? For what am I studying? For what am I living? Wealth pursued without purpose leads to emptiness. Wisdom pursued without purpose leads to abstraction. Purpose directs energy. It aligns decisions with values. When a person understands the meaning behind their actions, their entire life becomes coherent. The 10th principle is intellectual humility. Even at the highest level of scholarship, Maimonides warns against arrogance. The more one understands, the more one perceives the vastness of what remains unknown. Humility opens the mind to continued growth. It protects wisdom from corruption. It prevents wealth from inflating the ego. Humility keeps the soul receptive to truth. Together, these principles create a life of balance, a life in which wealth supports wisdom and wisdom guides wealth. But beyond these practical guidelines, Maimonides offers something deeper, a vision of the human purpose. He teaches that the ultimate goal is not comfort, not achievement, not even moral excellence alone. The ultimate goal is understanding, the clear perception of the order of reality and the presence of the divine within it. To live with wisdom is to see the world as a coherent whole. It is to recognize the unity of creation, the harmony of natural law, the beauty of justice, and the call of intellectual ascent. When a person aligns their material life with this vision, their actions become steps toward truth. Their wealth becomes a tool of sanctification. Their days become a journey toward clarity. Their mind becomes a sanctuary where understanding grows. This is the hidden path that Maimonides reveals, a path that exists not in distant monasteries or abstract philosophies, but in the practical and disciplined life of an ordinary person who chooses to live with purpose. It is a path for merchants, workers, leaders, parents, students, and seekers. It is the path of those who carry responsibilities, who navigate the world, who desire both stability and meaning. In the end, the integration of wealth and wisdom is not merely a technique for success. It is a spiritual transformation. It produces a human being who is grounded yet elevated, responsible yet reflective, active yet inwardly calm. Such a person moves through the world with steadiness, gratitude, and awareness. Their life becomes a harmony of action and understanding, and it is in this harmony that Maimonides locates true freedom, not the freedom of abundance alone, nor the freedom of knowledge alone, but the freedom of a soul that lives in accord with truth, a soul that uses wealth wisely, studies faithfully, acts justly, and contemplates deeply, a soul that rises. This is the legacy Maimonides offers. A path hidden not because it is secret, but because it requires discipline, clarity, and devotion. A path open to all who seek to unite the world outside with the world within. A path toward a life that is whole,